Hey, welcome everyone to the ArchiCAD User Monthly Webinar for November 2020. My name is Eric Bobrow, if you don't know. My special guest today is Francois Swanepoel of South Africa. How are you doing, Francois?
I'm good, thank you, Eric.
Well, I'm glad you are able to join us. It's pretty late there. It's 11 o'clock at night. Let's make sure everybody can hear us and see the screen. Right now I'm showing just the screen on the ArchiCAD user website, but in a couple of minutes we'll be taking a look at Francois' work. So please type into the questions area. Let us know that you can hear us and see us. Tell us where you're calling in from, and we will proceed. I see Paul Whitworth, an old friend here, all good. All right, Chris from BC, Richard from Bermuda, Dwight from Paris, Ontario, Joel from Concord, California. All right, so far we've got US, Canada, and the Caribbean. And John from Greece, all right. Rob from the UK, Doug from Brooklyn. All right, so looks like we got the crowd, and Ian from Scotland. So we're definitely carrying Europe, and I wonder if we'll have any of your South African colleagues on here. I imagine we'll have a few. So let me switch over so you can share your screen, and we'll just start talking about your work and what we're going to be seeing today in the next couple of hours. So I'll make you presenter here. All right, Sasha from Slovenia, Alexis as well. Okay, so good. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell it which screen to share, and then we should start seeing that. Now, I've known Francois for quite a few years, not well, but from a long distance from the other side of the planet. Francois has always had interesting questions and interesting examples or things that he's shown, and I definitely respect that you're another veteran who keeps pushing the limits of ArchiCAD, trying to take advantage of everything it has, not so much because it's just I want to use everything, but because it's useful, because you find ways to apply it, because you find ways to teach people. So you've been an architect as well as a reseller and a trainer. Tell us a little bit about your background in architecture and how you got into ArchiCAD.
Just firstly, just tell me which of the screens
We're seeing
what do you see on the share screen?
We create real change in the building industry, delivering BIM infused projects and teams. So this is about your Fusion BIM company.
Okay, just wanted to check which screen we're on. Yes, as it says there, currently the main services is architecture, standard architectural services. About 2.5 years ago, I researched and added virtual reality and scan to BIM division to the business after our reseller positions in South Africa has been closed down. I was a reseller for 9 years in South Africa for ArchiCAD, and in doing so, supporting through tech support and training, and obviously sales and consulting on templates and mainly template development, and also then server management, particularly BIM server, and in some cases facilitating collaboration workflows between mainly our ArchiCAD architect companies and then their counterpart MEP engineers and structural engineers. Okay. So mainly the IFC exchange workflows.
So Francois, when did you start your architecture career, and when did you start using ArchiCAD?
I qualified as an architectural technologist in 1992 in Pretoria, and back then my full studies were totally hand-drawn drawings, no CAD, no computers even. And I did my internship at an architect's office during my studies. I studied part-time and worked full-time. And then my first official, after graduation, my first official employment position was the building control officer at Ceres in the Boland. I moved down from Pretoria. I was there for 5 years and then resigned the municipality and went and started my first own business as a sole proprietor, doing design and construction turnkey solutions for the market. And that was up until 2004, from 1997 to 2004. And I went back into employment when a recession hit us. I didn't get paid for building a house, or a better part of the building of a house, and I had to close down shop. And so I was employed with different architects as a senior technologist in their studio from 2004 onwards for 4 years. And in that time, I started using ArchiCAD in the year 2000 when I was still working in my construction business. And obviously I just use ArchiCAD to do my designs. And before that, my first CAD package was CADI. It's a South African 2D CAD package, which was very different to the AutoCAD workflow. And I think it was in 1998, they changed to the DWG file format, and then they had paper space and model space, just like AutoCAD. That company is now owned by a company in London. It was bought over. But I transitioned to ArchiCAD 6.5 in the year 2000, and then in 2010, after having been retrenched for the last time, I decided that's the last time, I'm not going back. I was invited by Andre Strauss from Graphisoft SA to come and do the first for the South African market. 10 of us were invited to go and do the registered consultant accreditation during my time of unemployment. And a year later, we Andre started the reseller channel and started employing local-based support teams like myself in the different regions. I was one of 4 of the 10 that passed that first accreditation, and I've been maintaining my registered consultant up until 2015. I think it was, what is it, ArchiCAD 21 about. And subsequent to that, we didn't have that course being presented locally. So yeah, I'm very happy to see that that course is now being offered online by Graphisoft.
Mm-hmm. So started in 92, got into ArchiCAD around 2000, around 2010, you had reached a point of mastery that you were invited by Andre Strauss, who's no longer on this planet. I mean, he passed away, but to be part of Graphisoft South Africa's reseller channel and consultant coterie. So for the last 10 years, you've been in that position where you're formally recognized as a trainer and as an evangelist for ArchiCAD, someone helping to spread the word.
Yep.
And it looks like what you've done in the last couple of years or for a while is that you've broadened even beyond that. Although you're still using ArchiCAD as your primary tool, you're now consulting on scanning, all sorts of things about, I see from your diagram here, you're delivering BIM infused projects. So we're going to be looking at ArchiCAD particularly today, of course, but tell us a little bit about your vision for how ArchiCAD and these other tools work together. Just a couple of minutes on that.
Okay. Our resellership was terminated in 2016, early 2016. So it was from 2010 to 2016. I was a reseller, and I absolutely love doing the tech support and especially the training. I always said that when I'm busy training, that is my happy place. Time and the whole planet vanishes because I'm just in that space. I love transferring knowledge and actually helping the users to see the real potential that this toolbox of ArchiCAD has to offer. So I'm always trying to push the envelope and using ArchiCAD creatively, trying to do different things with ArchiCAD and just digging deeper. And through all of that, I've come to understand its capabilities. And being in practice all these years, because I was a reseller, but I'm also doing projects and helping 420 architectural practices across South Africa and some even in Namibia. By the end of my reseller term, it has grown to that group of clients that we were supporting. My understanding of, I got an exposure of a wide variety of workflows, a wide variety of focuses of these different practices of different sizes, focusing in different sectors of the market, different building types, and assisting them to get the most out of their ArchiCAD has given me a very broad spectrum of understanding of different projects and the different approaches. Since ArchiCAD 16, I was maintaining a template that I'd given to my clients. That all those clients of mine that especially came to training got my template, and it's always evolving. That template is never done. But in 2018, there was a big, 2016 was a big turn in my life personally and professionally. And in 2017, I did contract work for one of my long-term ArchiCAD clients and friend. And so that was kind of a breather period for me. And in 2018, when that projects were done, I was a free man, so to speak, with freedom as to what direction I'll be going into. And I got this vision of integrating all the different stakeholders around a project in one workflow. And in practical terms, that is what BIM is all about. Is that collaboration process, the protocols and the human factor that makes up the bigger part of that. So using all my skills and experience to bring that into one cohesive workflow, and I've compiled different service offerings and products along that value chain. So the virtual reality and the scanning was very close to one another. My brother and myself joined 3D Virtual Africa as associates. Now we are part of a network nationally of 9 scan stations across the country. And when we get big projects, we just pull resources and pull team members into bigger projects. So we're not separate operators.
So Francois, we've had one slide up on screen for quite a while. Let's take a look at your portfolio a little bit to give people a sense of the different types of projects you work on, and then let's dig into the first project, which I believe you said don't go too fast because this is like leave each one up for at least 5 seconds.
Yeah, sorry, I'm paging to specific ones here. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Because I know the very first one is going to be fascinating because it's a huge, huge project that involves a lot of land modeling, and you're going to be demonstrating to all of us how you effectively bring in, terrain model with a picture map, in a way that I think is quite powerful. So tell us briefly about each of these projects, and what's interesting about them. This is one of the ones we're going to be looking at. It's the final one we're going to be looking at, right?
That is correct, yes. So this is a second dwelling addition to an existing house on top of an existing house with some interesting limitations and parameters to the project, challenges that we're addressing. The middle project that we'll be tackling is this point cloud to as-built and design workflow conversion, focusing on the in this project we'll be focusing on the workflow of point cloud modeling for as-built, and then also in this specific file there's a short workflow that we'll just have a look at in terms of ArchiCAD's capabilities of analyzing the model for energy efficiency with the assistance of a tool that was created by BIM for our South African conditions, particularly. In particular, because of this legislation that we have, we need to submit these documents. So we'll be looking at that energy analysis and the reporting that it gives us, and the little amount of input that you need to give the tool in order to get that massive output. And then the farm model is not on here, I think. So this is just part of the house that we'll be looking at, the second-story dwelling. I'm very much passionate about alternative building systems, so container houses definitely is on the cards. It's a project that I did. This is the farm project that we'll be looking at. Commercial properties, residential high-rise buildings. This is a very exciting project that I worked on, collaborated with and assisted an architect from Pretoria on this airport in Uganda, which incorporated a aviation university campus as part of the development. This is a project that I did for A3D Architects when I was in PAR in 2017. A music center at a school, some town planning work, modeling and visualization work I did for some of our clients. And what you see here is a miniature oil rig, like a oil rig, a seaboard drilling rig for oil, but this is a miniature. So if I can just zoom in there, by that photo there you can see the a 6 foot or 6 meter, which is a 20-foot container on the platform of that rig. So that base of that rig is about 8 meters by 8 meters. It's a small rig in terms of these type of rigs, but this one is specifically built by an engineer in Namibia to draw pilot holes for De Beers mines, where they mine diamonds in the sea. And this is a mobile unit. It gets dismantled on a regular basis when they need to change ports, because they just draw pilot holes and move on, draw pilot holes and move on. So they need to dismantle and reassemble this piece of equipment on a regular basis, and it takes them from docking in the port, dismantling into the containers in a truck to the next port, and assembled again, launched.
So it's an interesting design challenge to create something that has all of the functions that this must have and still be able to be transported. So let's, I'm not sure how many more you were going to show, but I'd like to sort of dig into the first of your full projects, because I think that's where we'll start getting a real sense of all how different pieces fit together.
Right. Just in closing, I used ArchiCAD in this case to model the different parts, and as you can see, there's containers in transparent shape where I've used ArchiCAD's scheduling function to give me a packing list of each container, and we've optimized the packing, also packed those containers in sequence of assembly and disassembly, and then documented that process into a manual, an operational manual that we gave to the company, and they used that with great success. They from docking, relocating, and relaunching usually took up to 9 weeks where they are out of production, and they cut that down to 5 weeks with this manual that was then generated from this graphics and the models.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
So I want to just point out to everybody who's listening, as architects and designers, you create solutions to problems. You also maximize the benefits of opportunities. Both of those are valuable. Now, you know that they're valuable. You know that what you do has value to your clients. But think about, in this particular case, how much this design is worth to that company. Now, I don't have any idea of the numbers, but if they're regularly doing this thing, which it takes 9 weeks out of production, and he's able to reduce it down to 5 weeks because of the design that he's put together, that's 4 weeks of production that they gain. Now, how much is 4 weeks of production for that company? I don't know, probably quite a bit of money, right? So, Francois, I hope you were paid handsomely for this. I hope you were paid a fortune for it, because that's 4 weeks of production repeatedly, and you've made it possible for them. And so all of you, remember, if you've solved a problem for clients, if you've gotten more units on a site, if you've just made it possible to get a permit for something that was tricky, if you've, whatever it is, this has real value, and, claim your worth. So.
Definitely. And as you can see from the slide here, from this document, that was done in 2011, which was an ArchiCAD 17.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a look at your. All right, we'll go on, share some more of your work there.
There's some, what I'd love to do is, I've got a passion for heritage buildings in our rural areas. There's a lot of heritage buildings, and we work on those. It's a school. I've always used ArchiCAD to the 3D capabilities and visualization to also communicate technical challenges and solve tricky roof constructions and stuff like that. Just more examples of those. Yeah, that's a lot of that I want to show. This is just the render slides that we'll share on this project when we get to that one. So we're ready to dive into the farm.
Okay, go ahead and take us in.
Okay.
And by the way, for those of you who joined late, please just type in, say hello, tell us where you're calling in from. I see, since I announced earlier, we got someone from Hong Kong, and Slovenia. So definitely covering most of the world here.
So what you see here, I think we calculated this at, where's that email?
That was over 100,000 hectares, which would be 250,000 acres.
Yeah, it's a very large piece of land that we've got covered here in one model. And as you can see, the laptop that I'm working on right now is a i7 8th generation 2 gig with 32 gigs of RAM and a GTX VR capable graphics card. So it's 2 years old now, and the the entry level of this range of computers is now far exceeding my model. But I bought this model for the virtual reality capabilities when I started presenting projects in virtual reality and also facilitating virtual reality for other clients. So what you see here is, sorry, I've got a visitor here.
So
it always gets in the way and on my desk.
yeah, though. So you've got 15 buildings, you told me, that are modeled in detail because they're actually involved in construction, as well as other context buildings there.
Yeah. So this is a farmstead redevelopment of a total farm. Farm was bought by Arabians from the local family that had it in the family for 4 generations. And the model that you see, we'll show you an exercise on how to practically do this, to bring in geometry like this with that aerial photo wrapping on it and the contours. We'll show you all the tools to use. It's quite easy. So the gray buildings is just the stores that we weren't going to do any work on. That's on the property of the farm, and the white massing buildings are adjacent farm buildings on adjacent farms. And then the buildings that we were working on and renovating or building new is then fully detailed, as you can see here. Now I just want to quickly hide that one layer. Okay, get rid of all of that. So what we're looking at here is the original farmhouse. It's about 470 square meters. It's very, very spacious. I should have had photos of this. I do have photos of this. I'll share some photos with you afterwards, I think. I'm not going to take some time right now. But this house is exquisite. It's very old, and in its original state, including paneling, embossed paneling in the passages and stuff like that. It's really a big, very nice building, dating from 1906. And what we've did here, the round structure is an existing, let's call it a cottage. In South Africa, we call it a rondavel. So rond meaning round. So it's a round cottage. We call it a rondavel. And we've used this, it had a thatch roof. Took off the thatch roof, put a concrete roof on it, and at the back we've got ablution. Now we created a bar restaurant space function space for weddings and other functions. And we created this as a totally opposite to the old heritage building, being very modern, just as literally as a glass box. So the design thinking here is the Karoo is a semi-desert area, so it's very hot. And despite that, we created this glass box of which the roof itself is also fully transparent. In order to alleviate the buildup of heat in this enclosed space, we've opened it up with frameless doors, and then you'll see that this paneling in the roof structure in between the beams, just suspended panels with insulation material, and then chroma deck as a panel. And then we've cut these different patterns into making an array of patterns. And if I temporarily switch on the shadows, that was quite smooth. I'm happy for that. You can see these shadows that it's creating all over the space, creating a real ambiance, which is totally contrary to the external side of the building. And these shadow patterns will move along with how the sun turns during the day from morning till evening. And so this space is never static, creating some drama in the space as well at the same time. So, but the whole idea of this model is to look at the expanse. So on this side of the farm, we've got a little new village that is will be erected for the farm workers, with a little community hall for them in a isolated, separate space where they can have their parties on the weekends and all those stuff. And then there's several small cottages on the farm. Okay, all right.
So, so in terms of the technology, I know the one thing that people, immediately we had a question saying, how did you get this terrain model done? I know you're going to show that in a separate file. Before we do that, is there anything else, particularly noteworthy about this file? Obviously, you have a bunch of buildings. Are each of the buildings in a separate file being hot linked in? How are you doing that?
Yeah, using the Hotlink module workflow. So the terrain model is what I call the master, and then Hotlink the different buildings or combination of buildings together as separate files, and then just hotlink them back in to this file here. The construction drawings of each of these buildings, now it's playing the fool with us. Is documented in those individual files. And then only the site, the main full site, is documented in this file.
Right. Okay. Excellent. So let's take a look at that process. I know you created a separate file for doing the demonstration. So if you want to get that open, and so I understand that you use a publicly available resource online, CADMapper.com, to get some terrain information. Is that right?
That is correct. And we'll go to the website to start with, so you can see all the information that's collected in combination with Google Earth. So if it's okay with you, I'm now going to close this file.
Yeah, I think we've seen, well, we've certainly seen just the context of all these buildings and some of the interesting architectural information there. I guess one other thing you mentioned to me was that ceiling, that glass box, that you've got some natural cooling. So instead of using high energy air conditioning, you're using some misting and evaporative cooling strategies, which can keep it cool even. So with those closed doors, you can keep it cool even though it's really hot outside.
Yeah, that is correct. And even opening the doors strategically will create a draft, and by means of the mistifying system and the draft, you create a cooling effect in the space.
Interesting.
So yeah, right. So
yeah, so you can post the file. I think it's very impressive. But let's see how you do it. You know, how do you bring stuff in?
So this is just a blank file, the screenshot. Before the time I thought, okay, let's go to San Rafael, which is your neck of the woods.
All right. Yeah, I was looking at it going, wait a second, that's where I live.
And see if we can get some interesting geometry.
Before you go on, let me just point out at the very bottom of the screen, you can barely see it, is the edge of San Francisco. And then just up above that, you may see Alcatraz Island. And then as you move up north, you see San Rafael sort of in the center, slightly to the left. That's Marin County. The water area is the Pacific on the left, which would be to the west. And then this is the San Francisco Bay. And the Golden Gate Bridge is not really seen, but it's between that lower peninsula at the bottom and Sausalito. So Sausalito near the bottom, but a little bit up. So that's where the Golden Gate Bridge is, in that area. All right, so what are you gonna actually bring stuff in from the Bay Area? Is that right?
Well, we any area would be good as any other.
All right. Well, show us something.
Just give me 1 second. She was getting a bit.
Wendy's saying that she's from Mill Valley, just north of Sausalito. We can see Mill Valley on there. Hey, Wendy.
Okay. So, firstly, what we see here is Google Earth, right? And just for context, if I go to my hometown, we'll just fly away over to South Africa, and love this effect. So there you've got South Africa, and just about an hour's drive from the southern coast, you'll find Oudtshoorn, and that's where I'm sitting. And this farm, I've got the blue line is the farm border, and the yellow square is the area that I've modeled. And you'll see that I've bordered our town, Oudtshoorn. Now, our town, Oudtshoorn, is 23,000 hectares, and this farm is 34,000 hectares. So the farm itself is larger than our town. And the square area is, I think it was 32,000 hectares. So yeah, just let's go back outside. So from Google Earth, I mainly get the top view, high definition aerial photograph. So it doesn't matter which area we pick. You want to get something that's interesting and slopey. It doesn't look too sloppy to me. So number one, you want to identify the area that you're working in, and Google Maps and Google Earth does that very well for you. When we go to CADMapper, just CADMapper.com, and this is a website that utilizes an API into Google Earth and Google Maps, and pulls geometry data, roads, contours, and then 3D buildings if they are populated in the Google Earth data set. So you need to sign in. I'm just going to just showing you the whole process. Oh.
So before you go further, I mean, go ahead and log in, but there's a question. How did you mark up the Google Earth view? You know, you showed a polygon for the farm. So question is, that was in Google Earth directly. How did you mark that up?
Okay, I'll just quickly show that. Just have this login for me. Meantime, there you go. So if I go to Outsourcing, we could have done it on that end as well. Okay, so it doesn't matter which area you pick. There's the ruler here, and you can measure a line. So in this case, I used a path. You can set your units. You can mark a polygon, and you will get the perimeter as well as the area using the polygon method. So you just click starting point, and you can start tracing your area. And if you want to, you can then save it, give it a name, and give the polygon some kind of style, and so forth. So you'll get your altitude data, measured data you want in kilometers. Well, let's go kilometers and squares.
So this is in your local copy of Google Earth, your account. You're logged into the public database, but you're making some notes for the site that is of interest. And so then it allows you to get data as well as, of course, some visualization that's relevant to your needs. That's
yes, and this data is saved locally to my computer. It's not saved in the cloud.
And so Wendy says, so these areas are approximate, not specific. I imagine you can zoom in and be as precise as you need. And can you actually put in survey numbers to get very precise?
To put in coordinates for your actual locations.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine so. I haven't done that yet. But I mean, as close as you can log in or zoom in, and trace any fixed markings.
Yeah. So just for Wendy and others, I know that if you put in a coordinate in ArchiCAD, you can actually say show in Google Earth or Google Maps. I can't remember which one, but basically, the data, you can make it as precise as you need. Maybe not precise enough for submitting survey drawings to a municipality, but you can certainly get as precise as you would need for visualization.
I use Google Earth a lot when we do quotations for this scanning of the buildings, and we work across the country. So I use Google Earth, especially in the main cities. You get this exquisite 3D geometry, so I can inspect the site and get a good feel for the conditions on site and whether it's a 2 or 3 or single-story building, quickly determining the scope, and you can use the measure tool, and if you click you can actually very closely measure the boundaries of this building, and if you need to, you can just grab that point and move it and so on and get it really accurate. Actually, John Helgarth has a very good video about this workflow, and I've learned more about this more advanced part of my workflow. It's come from that video of his.
Whose video is?
John Helgarth from ContraBIM.
Oh, okay, right, okay. All right, so this is Google Earth. This has all this data that we're seeing visually, but it also has, of course, the contours. It has all of that, and it has, in some cases, buildings have been modeled to some level of detail. Now, you're going to use CADMapper to bring in part of this, so show us how that works.
Right. While we're in Google Earth, I want to get a photograph, an aerial photo. So you go to Save Image.
Where are we now, by the way? Is this in your area?
This is your area.
Oh, okay.
Just in the bay. So I want to get this map.
Can you put in an address?
Yeah, give us an address there to go.
All right, 211.
211.
Las, L-A-S.
Yeah.
Gallinas, G-A-L-L.
Yeah.
I-N-A-S.
I-N-A-S.
Avenue. There you go. That's it. That's my home.
Right.
And then just do the region around me. There is a hill. There are some hills, just a few blocks away. So it's a hilly area.
We'll get some contours. Great stuff.
All right.
Okay.
So if you zoom out just a little bit, you'll see, we start having some hills, not very far away. But this is a flat little residential neighborhood. But you see the unimproved stuff to the left of my area. That's a hill, and everything's being built around the outside of that. So anyway, all right. Let's have some fun with my local town.
Okay. So use the drop down here, and I just switch it to the maximum 4.8K resolution, and just wait for it to properly load, and then give it by means of a full top view, and then you can basically save out this image. So there's a hill over there. So we'll do that area there in CADMapper.
Yeah, you can see a couple of hills there. So.
Right. So you just save this image out, and I'll take it to downloads for now. Right. See, it takes quite a while to download that high resolution image. While it's doing that, let's go to CADMapper. Let's log in by now, and let's. No, it's not going to allow me to copy that address. You're going to just pull it.
I'll just read it off. I'll read it off to you. So yeah. 211.
211.
Las, L-A-S, Gallinas, G-A-L-L-I-N-A-S, Avenue, and that's San Rafael. It's not showing yet. You need to put in so it says Las Gallinas Avenue, secondary, San Rafael. But anyway, if you just type in San Rafael, I guess.
There you go.
Okay, there we are. Yeah, I'm pretty much centered in that screen. Yep. And that hilly area is on the upper left of the currently registered area. You know, you can see that's the hill that everything's been built.
So that's your street, and that's the hill over there. So being logged in, CADMapper gives you a 1 square kilometer area of extraction at no cost. And if you need a larger map, like I did need for the farm, it's really affordable. You just use this window to crop the area, the size of the area that you want. And at the bottom of the screen, you can see the size of the area. It's reporting and calculating the size of this crop window. And so we can grab quite a big area here. So if I'm correct, your hill
that'll be good. We'll have the hill in it.
Yeah. So you can just go grab the area. It's under 1 square kilometer, so this one will be at no cost. I designate to SketchUp 15. It's going to give you a 3D SketchUp file, which is the newest version available on the platform. You can control the different parameters here for your buildings. You can activate the buildings if you want, or just disable them. Yes, I want the site geometry, and then the contours must be at 5-meter intervals, and you just configure that and just say create the file. It takes just a minute or so. Meanwhile, you've got a lot of data here about that location, giving you the GPS locations, the area, all that type of information that you can see here. So the file is now ready for download. So it's a 590K file to download there. You've got some previews here. It loads, it comes down with the download. These are your contours, just in the image format. I'm just going to download that very quickly. It's a small file. Okay, so now we're going to go to our downloads. I'm just going to extract the file here. So it's a zip file. And inside the zip file is a SketchUp file with a little text file giving you some instructions and stuff like that. So I'm going to open the SketchUp file. I'm running the free version of SketchUp 2017, which was the last desktop version of the free SketchUp file, program. And as you can see here, it comes through with a selection of layers. And I'm guessing this looks quite familiar, Eric.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So you can see it's got the contours, it's got the 3D shape, it's got your roads in here, and it's got some buildings that it picked up from the 3D, which is in Google Earth. In this case, we'll just do this as one file. But in the case of that specific farm, I wanted to control more of the detail. So what I did was I saved out the important layers of the SketchUp file to a separate SketchUp file. I delete, in turn, I'll delete these layers that I don't want, and only isolate, for example, the contours, and save that out as a SketchUp contours file. Right. In this case, we're going to keep the file intact, save time. So this is basically what the file looks like. There's your typography, and switch on everything, just normal layers we've got. Now let's go to our ArchiCAD. You literally just drag and drop the SketchUp file from your file manager to the floor plan of ArchiCAD. And it's going to ask you, that file comes with GPS location information. And I'm going to override the project location with imported coordinates. So it's going to give me an immediate match on my project origin in the ArchiCAD setup. And just place that model in the ArchiCAD file. And what it's doing now, it's creating embedded library part of that 3D geometry. This is in the correct orientation for north. If you go and look at your project preferences location, you'll see that this is northern hemisphere to the west, which is your...
Just change the time zone. I guess it did not pick up the time zone. So press where it says, well, we are UTC -8 Pacific time, so it was almost right. There you go.
No, it's close. And this is the coordinates. The
altitude is -1 meter. Interesting. I knew we were close to sea level.
No. And here's the function that you said show in Google Maps. So let's check that coordinates that it brought in for us in Google Maps. From that button in ArchiCAD, it opens your web browser and goes to Google Maps by those coordinates. And lo and behold.
Yeah, it's just a little south of where I am. So if you scroll just up a tiny bit, like bring the model down or bring the view down. So pan it down. That's probably the bottom left corner of it. If you pan it down a little bit, yeah. So now you can see it's actually in the to the right is where I live, and then up above that where it's, yeah. So that's fine. It's perfect. It's right where we are. Yep.
Yeah. So this basically on the hill there. So
so now you're going to bring in that high resolution picture and show us how you align.
Yeah. So that photograph. So let's just check. That photograph would have been saved here. So that's the texture photograph that we've got. And just in the viewer. So I'm just going to just OK on that. Now we're going to set up a texture, a surface in ArchiCAD, and just call this sitemap aerial. So this is the texture from the farm. I got in this blank file. So I'm just going to create this copy called Rick, and then just change the, in this case, just change the texture. It's not loaded to the file, so I need to add and then browse to my downloads where I got the file saved. And that's the file that we downloaded. It will then embed that image file into the embedded library. I click OK. That image is then now linked to this surface. You have to keep the original proportions, so it doesn't distort the photograph. And you can see the scale of these proportions is quite large because of the large resolution of the photograph. You can see it's still matching what we downloaded from.
But it's actually not. It's not the size of this view. It's the size of the one it was duplicated from the farm. So how do you get the actual size? Do you have to play around, or can you read it off somewhere?
If you measure this area in Google Earth, so if you create a frame like I did with the yellow frame, and they say this is my designated area that I want, you can create a matching cropped area in CADMapper. So as you can see the streets. It's low detail, but you can create a very close resemblance of that same area.
Okay, so can you get it relatively close? Just I know we want to see some other projects, so just the suspense is killing me. How do you just get it somewhat close, and then how do you get it so that it lines up good enough for a demonstration?
So in ArchiCAD, you'll just tweak the proportions of that texture. After you see how it fits, I can see if it's overshooting or if it's starting to tile, and then it's just a proportion calculation I do to get the proportions right. And the actual 3D geometry also tells me where it sits in the lines. So let's just do this for the start. The texture is now loaded. The 3D model from SketchUp is loaded. I select the image or the element object, go to the settings, and obviously you just go to model and just create or pick the designated texture as an override to the object. If you go to the preview, you'll see.
I think the scale is just way too big right now because it's, you had something that was the size of your farm. That's why we're just seeing probably part of a gray road or something like that. You're not seeing anything. So
yeah, now you'll go back to your surface and just take out some zeros. And because it's locked in, it will auto calculate. And I also want to select that, go to document, and just as a starting point, go to creative imaging and align texture. It is selected and does have a texture assigned. So why do we supposed to ask me that question whether I want to relocate? But let's go back and just some more. Obviously, we didn't do the pre-calculation, but you get the idea.
Yeah, what I would
Right.
suggest probably would work is to take the picture and place it just as a graphic on the plan and stretch it as a picture on plan to match whatever, you know, the terrain is, because once you place that picture and you get it sized, then you can do a measure. So since this SketchUp import should be in scale, then if you get the picture in 2D to match, then you know the size of your texture map. So we can see that picture right now came in at a certain thing, so you just have to make it a lot bigger. So it seems like we're probably running out of time to get a convincing demonstration here in terms of a tutorial, but if we can just get it at least in the ballpark of the right size.
Yeah, so let's go reshape, resize. We'll just go graphic. And that is, let's just go D on the keyboard, Control C, can copy that value. That'll give me the proportion immediately. Enter. So that's pretty close. And then go back to the surface. And make. And it is the horizontal portion that I copied from that rescaling.
Okay, so something's not quite, you know, getting mapping onto it. So
No.
It's possible you've got it as an object. It's possible you need to turn it into a morph or something else. Or do you do this routinely with it just being an object?
I probably did turn it into a morph. There you go.
There. Okay, so it may or may not be aligned quite, you know, properly, but basically by just changing the scale factor. And I'll point out that your image you took from one screenshot isn't necessarily exactly the same as the picture you had in CADMapper when you said extract it. So, you know, obviously a little more coordination between those processes, and you'd be able to get this. But fantastic that you can actually have these contours visible, and you can you know, the pictures on there. So it's a little bit off because we don't have any buildings on that actual hill there, but we're getting the idea of it. With a little bit of experimentation, you know, you'd have it working. So let's take a look at some of your other projects. So Eric Reinhardt says, was that SketchUp Make 2017? So let me just explain for you, Francois. So SketchUp has had many different versions over the years. For a while, they had a free version that would last forever. You could use it up to like 8 hours. So it would time you, you know, you weren't using it for 20 minutes here, 15 minutes there. You know, that went out through 2017. Now I think they have a 30-day trial. And then if you want to have a full version of SketchUp, it's something like $300 a year. So it's not cheap, but it's not expensive either. But any of those versions from 2015 up can read the CADMapper output and therefore get the contours. And ArchiCAD can read, you can drag and drop SketchUp into ArchiCAD. ArchiCAD 24 can take, I think, SketchUp 2019, if I'm not mistaken. so
Yeah.
there's always, it takes a little while for compatibility. But the basic workflow is clear. CADMapper gets the contours, Google Earth gets the picture. You bring them in through SketchUp and, through just the picture, and you overlay them, and bingo, you've got a 3D model with lots of detail.
And just to add a note, remember to convert that object to a morph, as you rightly indicated, and that solved the image mapping.
Right. Okay. So let's take a look at some of the other projects, because we're already well over an hour. Francois, I know time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
So we have two other projects, both of which have interesting technology stuff, and I want to make sure we, are able to see both of them. And if you have any questions or comments, please type them in, because it's always interesting, well, to answer your questions and to see any comments, insights, or even if you just, do you feel it's useful? I mean, will you be able to use this for some of your projects? Type that in. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. We'd love to hear those questions. Let's go to the second dwelling addition. So just to give you background on this project, we'll start with the measure drawing, which I call in my template the measure drawing, is the as-built. I didn't measure this. I measured this by hand and didn't scan this property. But you'll see that this property has a single sloping roof. This roof is asbestos, original asbestos, which is illegal for us to have or build new with. Existing buildings needs to have heavy permits, and then site conditions very controlled in order to remove or just simply work on these roofs. So we wanted to avoid touching this roof because of the cost constraints and also the time delays that you'll have with this slow work process that needs to start, stop, start, stop as the particles goes into the air with working, because it's a very strong health hazard to lung infections. Now, the client wants to put a second dwelling on this property, and the first contact that I got was to put it on top of this building. We would exceed the coverage allowance on this property, already fairly covered. So going up would be the solution, and the town planning schemes allows for that. Those are the two main parameters that we have in this project. So ended up just switching to the new condition with this design here. And as you can see, there's this large carport. They are incorporating 3 families into this property. The couples, both parents, will then be living with them on the same property, 3 families basically.
Can you go back and forth between old and new just a couple of times? Just leave the same view up just so we can see,
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got some roofs. No, just stay in one view so we can see, because it's much easier to visualize. Just switch back and forth.
Okay. All right. So in front, there's no carports, no single story, and the current entrance to the property main front doors is in that canopy, and that is the northern side of the yard where the pool and a lapa is, and the garage is on this end. So if we go to the new condition, you'll see that this is the addition on top, and there's just the carport for all these new vehicles that are now coming to the property.
So it's been integrated in a way where you don't see, it doesn't look unnatural. It looks like it was built this way, but you're actually building this with structural supports that do not require any significant modification to the existing roofs. That's incredible. So show us some of the diagram where you're showing how these tie in.
Right. So the diagram that caught your eye when we were talking about this are these diagrams, and I created these views from the ArchiCAD file using graphic overrides live in a conversation with my engineer on the project. He doesn't use any modeling software for his design work, very old school and very simplistic 2D. But obviously he was very excited for having this conversation with me, and we could turn the model around via online call like this, and not even being together. And then I just saved these views for him and sent in this drawing as a reference to our conversation. What you see here is then the green slabs is the main building slabs of the top story, and the red, semi-transparent red areas is the balcony slabs for that top story. And why they're different in colors is to just indicate where the weather step is. There's a 50 millimeter level difference between the top of concrete to allow for a weather step at the doors. So we need to have supporting structures there at that weather step joint. And then also we were going to then construct these slabs, not with in situ concrete, but with precast concrete slabs. It's hollow core precast slabs.
Just can you show a section of the end result so we can just sort of see how you have the precast up above and how it fits into the existing structure?
Right. So this would be a good example of that section there. So this would be the existing structure with a parapets, sloping roof, and we have a concrete slab which is then supported by the parapets on the upper side of the roof, and then we've got a steel structure beams columns that is on this end supporting beams that is going under the slab at certain points, which will just go back to the model. The walls will be constructed of lightweight concrete. That's the polystyrene mixed into the concrete forming into concrete formwork, manufactured off-site into panels and then assembled as panels on site.
So by having it prefabricated off-site, you're able to just lift the whole sections of it up into position with a crane and just get the time on site reduced to a minimum?
Get the time reduced and also the risk of either damaging or needing to touch or work on that existing roof as well.
And when you do come back to the model, I'd like to just see you do a 3D cutaway, just so we can see that structure that would relate to that section.
Right. I haven't updated the model with the actual geometry of these concrete slabs, but this is a typical photograph of these slabs, what they look like when assembled. Okay, and they get lifted with cranes. The crane that we'll have on this site will have the capacity of an 80-ton lift at a reach distance of 22 meters. So you'll understand 80 tons at a reach of 22 meters. That's a quite considerable capacity for a crane.
Where do you put the crane on this site? You know, like in other words, the access.
Yeah, we've actually calculated that in conversation. So the property on the bottom of the screen here is this main street. It's got a panhandle entrance of 4.2 meters wide, and then you enter into the site, and these blue circles indicate the center of that crane hoist, and the largest circle will be the free area which needs to be free for the crane to rotate, and the smaller circle is where the crane bed will be supported with its downwards legs onto the ground. So that's the solid crane position, and then the largest circle is the swing arm free distance that it requires to operate. But the distance that it will cover is from that center point to that far end by the chimney here, indicating by this line that I'm showing. That's about 22.5 meters. So we just got into reach with that crane at that position. So the crane position was tested. As part of this conversation, these drawings are currently in between detailed design and council submission, because we are at the moment getting in costing from all the different suppliers and contractors. For preliminary costing, we are considering different roof types, different wall types. We are fixed on the slabs that we want to use, and then we'll make a budget decision based on the feedback that we get, hoping to get that next week.
So can you do a cutaway that would be similar to that section?
Yeah.
And since we are at the 85-minute mark, want to make sure we get to the other file, which had the 3D scans with Matterport.
The point cloud. Okay, cool. Right. The section we had taken was in that area there. Just from the other side, but this gives you the same message. So this here is the existing parapet, which we'll just build up, because these parapets are stepped, as you can see, at different levels. So we'll just have full in brickwork there to create a supporting structure for this main slab, the concrete walls, and then we're going to have structurally insulated panels for the roofing with IBR and at high density polystyrene core, structural core, and then the ceiling finish to that complete panel is then also chroma deck finish. These panels don't need any structural support over a distance of 7.5 meters with a polystyrene core of 75 millimeters. So no structural beams, rafters, purlins, nothing needed for the structure of the roof. So does that give you the picture that you were looking to see?
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great. So I think we need to move on. We could spend some more time looking at some of the details here, but let's take a look at your other project and see if there are any questions or comments on this one. So Stan says, I assume that the existing foundation could support the extra loads?
That's one of the first inspections we did. We did a pilot test hole, and then engineer came and inspected the foundations, and they were found to be sufficient, yes.
Okay.
Just showing a few slides of twin motion renders that I did on this project. That's the slide there. So now we move on to the point cloud. Any other questions? Okay. I'll keep that open if we need to go back. It's available. So this third project is a commissioned by an architect in Pretoria. As you saw in the map, I'm in the southern side of the country. Pretoria is about 1,000 kilometers northeast of my location. So I was not on the site, and yet the point cloud enabled me to generate an as-built, very accurate as-built model of this project, of the existing conditions. What you see here on the screen is the point cloud loaded to the ArchiCAD file. To get your point cloud file into ArchiCAD, you basically go to File, Interportability, Import Point Cloud. And by means of the interface, you can see these two file types that you need to request from your digital survey team, E57 or XYZ file types. In this case, a Matterport camera equipment was used, so we got the XYZ file type. So just quickly go over an overview of what Matterport is. Matterport is a United States-based company that initially created this Matterport camera with the 9 lenses, of which 3 is infrared. The other 6 lenses will capture 4K photographic panorama photogrammetry, and then the 3 infrared lenses captures the point cloud, the laser point cloud, the LiDAR points. We also use the BLK 360 for warehouses and larger retail spaces. You can even use your cell phone, a list of compatible cell phones. Obviously, the quality of the point cloud that you'll get from the smaller devices is questionable for our purposes. So the Matterport and Leica BLK 360 is the source of choice.
Now it has a sign at the top, save $400 on a Matterport 2. So what is the approximate pricing of a Matterport camera?
Pricing?
Not that you're selling them, but just so that people know that you actually use one, you have one. So it's not out of the question for any architect who would find it useful. So here we're talking about $3,000, and it's down, maybe it's and then there's service a certain amount per month. So
So this is the software as a service. So the point cloud, or the raw data processing happens in their cloud platform, which we then capture from the camera to a tablet, specifically an Apple tablet at the moment. but the camera equipment is about $3,000.
Right. Okay. So it's like the cost of a good laptop, you know, or a very fine laptop, but it's not the cost of a car or anything.
Right. In South African terms, it's about 85,000 Rand, at $3,000, and I could buy a fairly decent car with 85,000 Rand.
And
it wouldn't be new.
Yeah, you can buy a transportation car for that, but yes.
Yeah.
All right. So you've got that,
So,
and this is high resolution imagery and high resolution LiDAR data geometry. So we're going to look at it right now, just in terms of the actual. Just if you were to tour this without ArchiCAD, just take a look inside. Show us what we got.
Yeah. So with one scan, we produce this virtual tour that just runs in your web browser by means of a link, and then separated in separate layer and file output is the actual point cloud files that we just share with our clients via Dropbox and Google Drive, for example. And what you see here is what we call the dollhouse view, and it's self-explanatory by name. Just view the model from inside or outside. You've got a photo gallery that we save when we process, and here you can see full panoramic views. You've got different views. You've got 360 views, which is just a stationary view, or you've got the live tour views indicated by the little guy. We'll just go into the house, and you can look around. And on the floors, you'll see these circles, which indicate a specific scan point. All the way up the stairs and down the stairs, you'll get these different scan points. And when you click, you will navigate from one to the other. But in fact, this is not just photographic panoramas. If you just keep your eye on that cursor, on that circle cursor, you'll see that it flips onto the surface. That means that this data that you're looking at is actually proper 3D in your web browser. And that is what's being converted to your point cloud, and how the photogrammetry matches the actual point cloud data. So this property was quite complex in terms of levels. The site over a 40-meter distance has a 4-meter drop from the one side to the other. So you can navigate by the gallery. You can navigate by just walking. You can zoom in. This is 4K photographic quality, so you can zoom in quite far and actually get real good, sharp imagery. I use this as a reference, a visual reference. There is a measure tool on the web browser version, and you can actually physically measure. That magnifying glass will give you a zoom on the specific point that you're measuring to, and you can measure this. It will stick there if you need to. But with the point cloud, there's no need for me to measure here. I do all the measuring in ArchiCAD. This point cloud file has millions of these points. And as you can see, the ArchiCAD cursor gives you a tick mark as a snap point to each and every one of those millions of points. That's how it becomes a digital survey. In our presentation this morning with our clients on the CPD workshop, I explained to them that this is literally like tracing over a DWG CAD file. But the difference is this is 3D. You can trace vertically. You can snap and reference points vertically. There you can see the shape of a light switch on the wall. in the point cloud. Now, if you zoom out, it looks like a photo. And as you come closer, you'll see that the points then start separating as you get closer. The reason is that you get the photographic type view or feel for it. Each of these points is captured the XYZ coordinates as well as a color code for that specific point as per the camera view. So you get kind of the best of both worlds here.
Now, by the way, I'll point out that was confusing to me at first. This is the inside of the building. You know, we're of course looking at it from outside, but these are the interior points with essentially no skin on it because you haven't integrated the exterior data. Is it possible to integrate an exterior scan as well, or is that just not done or not practical?
In this case, this scan was not done by us. It was done for this architect by another contractor, and they didn't do a good job. They probably just went for the cheapest quote, and only the interior was scanned. We would have done a proper job which is suited for point cloud modeling, whereby we then scan the outside of the building as well. We'll go twice around the building at a 1.8 meter height camera height, and then also at a 3.2 meter camera height, which gives us a double story and some of the roof. And we actually mapped out our scan route to actually scan on top of the roof. So let's have a look at the building, right? Is that okay, Rick?
Yeah. So basically, you can have it integrated. This one was done by somebody else, and they didn't give you all the data you ideally would need. Yeah, let's take a look at the building. So you use this as something to trace over to show the existing conditions, and of course do a remodel, extension, addition as well.
That's right. So I'm just going to show the existing condition. So this is the existing property. We were doing a double story addition on this end. This deck and roof cover has been removed and replaced on this end. This covered stoop by the pool will be fully enclosed as part of the design. An additional room is added here, and a new double garage, additional garage is being built on in this area, and a new scullery added over there. So this is the existing condition. If I now switch to the new construction, this is the way that my template is set up to override demolished elements in transparent yellow. I can identify them. And for the purpose of this workshop, I created a graphic override profile so that we can just color the existing elements in the model as the blue. The yellow transparent is already overridden with graphic overrides for transparent yellow. That's the demolished. And then the full detail is what is then new in this project.
Okay, excellent. By the way, there's a question from Rob Warren saying, how many stations were required to scan the property?
Stations, scan points. This was about 220 scan points.
All right, so 220 places where the device was put down and rotated around to get data?
That is correct. And obviously this was only the interior done, and not even the full interior. So if we just have a look at the scan again.
So about how long would that take? Now, you said that this was done by another company, so we don't know how long they took. But for a project like this, if you went in, would you, first of all, is it a one-person job? Or is it require more than one? And how long would a job like this take to do an as-built survey?
Yes, the scan process and publishing is a 48-hour turnaround time, but the actual scanning on site of a property like this, if we were to scan what was scanned here, it's a 2-hour job on site.
So 2 hours on site, but if you did the exterior as well, then you'd be doubling that or something?
Yeah, 3.5 hours to do the full scope that we allowed for. We will typically allow for a proper point clouds based scan.
Okay, so half a day for a fairly substantial project, residential project. And then you said it's a 48-hour turnaround for that to be uploaded, converted, and then brought back down?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
That 48 hours then gives you the point cloud files and the virtual tour that we just saw.
Okay. Excellent. So really, it's a very quick process, and that any architect with a little bit of training, in fact, you offer this type of training, right, Francois?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So any of you who wanted to spend $3,000 on a camera like this, and what, $70 a month or something for their service, and then either learn it yourself or get someone like Francois to help you, you can do this. Now, what do you get out of it? You get the point cloud which you can look around, but you built the as-built. How long did it take you to do the as-built compared to, you have an estimate, and how long would it have taken you if you were working from, just hand measurements?
Yeah, I've got a very, very good example of what hand measurements looks like. In fact, this is our presentation. So I've got hand measurements. There's a good example of the tool set that you'll have. Clipboard with some paper and hand sketch of the plan and whatever data you've captured. Nowadays, not even the camera, just a cell phone with photographs. That's your data set. And the drawback of that is we found it so many times doing that ourselves, or have to do it that way ourselves before. You need to go back several times to get all the data you need at the end. While you're drawing, while you're designing, you discover, okay, I didn't get this beam exact position, or I need to get the cable work in the walls because there's a wall that needs to be there. Maybe it clashes with my DB board and I don't want to relocate the whole electrical center DB board. You need to go back several times. With a point cloud and virtual tour combination scan, you don't need to go back to site. I did this without being there. The model from the point cloud with this low level of detail took me 2.5 days to model for as-built. And the model that I delivered was an LOD 300 detail level model. That means the gutters, the downpipes, the windows are modeled according to the actual windows. It's not just a single hole in the wall. The built-in furniture, sanitary ware, everything is built into the model as per the existing conditions on site, LOD 300.
So by the way, for those who don't know, let me just clarify something, Francois, because you take it for granted that people know what LOD 300 even refers to. LOD, level of detail. 100, schematic level. 200, a little bit more design development. 300, up to a certain level of symbolic representation, but accurate. And what 400 is like shop drawings?
Yeah. 400 is manufacturing shop drawings, yes.
Yeah.
So this is just one slide of our presentation of the training series or the introduction. And this is a good reference of what the different LODs mean.
Right. Okay. So you took 2.5 days to do a, what do you call it, an as-built model in ArchiCAD, which, for a fairly complex project, and how it all fits on the site and the roofs and everything like that. And how long, do you have any idea how long that would have taken with manual measurements?
It would have probably taken me an extra day, 3.5 days. Yeah, if
Okay.
I just stick to working hours.
But plus more time on site as well.
Countless times maybe going back to site, because you the amount of data that you return with a point cloud and the virtual tour is 300% more than you can capture by hand.
Right. Okay. So anyway, it saved you, perhaps 30% of the time for modeling, and it's more accurate and definitely reduced time on site. So all of you can take that as a case for the return on investment for having tools like this. Now, let's talk a little bit about the your CPD thing. So Francois was telling me that he not only does these things like models based on, well, he'll model his own projects, he'll model other people's projects based on, this point cloud data. So if you have a project that you want to put into ArchiCAD, that's something that at least potentially he can help you with. If other people are scanning, if you're based in the US, you can get it scanned, and then someone like Francois can help. But also Francois is teaching people how to use this workflow, and you've just produced the first of a series of continuing education training materials on how this works, how to approach learning it, right?
That is correct, yes. Delivered our first CPD workshop today to an architectural practice doing by online. And you can see the document that I was sharing on screen. Mm-hmm. So the part of our offer with this session with you is a promotional offer that I've organized with Sean Hopkins for the BIM Bakery toolset. We can spend 1 minute, 2 minutes just showing people what that's about. We're running out of time. And then the Scan to BIM for ArchiCAD workflow training CPD workshops will be going to this eCPD Pro website, which is based in South Africa, where people can then sign up and attend at their own on demand.
Okay, so let me just, since we already went through it, I want to just sort of cut, not to the chase, but just, all right, so this is, you've just created the first one of these training things for continuing education. It'll be up within a week or two on this site for something very reasonable, like $30, I think you were saying. And that's a 1 hour introduction to this. You're going to be having several of these that will go into more detail for how to do this process. So if you want to learn how to do this process, check out this ecpdpro.co.za or ZA. So E, like for electronic, and CPD, continuing professional development, pro, ecpdpro.co.za. So that's where you go in and you would do a search for scan to BIM. Is that right?
They will be loading. It's not there right yet. So this is the website. You'll get here. You can sign up for the different courses. So you'll recognize our our course by means of our logos and brand. And obviously you'll be able to find it, scan to BIM, if you search the site.
All right, so that's one thing. So you'll be able to learn. Francois is also available as a consultant, so if you want to get some advice on how to do things, then you can contact him for that. Now, there are some questions specifically about this. Doug Mira says, does ArchiCAD make a morph from a point cloud? So when you bring this in, you're using that command that I think you showed that says import a point cloud, and it's looking specifically for this very long text file that has just all the points in it. And it maintains an entity, a thing that is a point cloud. So it's a unique thing in ArchiCAD, just like a beam is a unique thing compared to a wall. Now, can you convert that into a morph, or is there any reason to?
Let me show you that. It's much easier to answer that question by means of showing. So the point cloud, once it's loaded in ArchiCAD, you'll see that I'm selecting it now, it becomes an object.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to your library manager, you'll see that ArchiCAD, this object is actually embedded in an LCF library file.
Mm-hmm.
So that full data set of all those points is then into this LCF, and your interface in the ArchiCAD is on the object tool. Mm-hmm. So it sits in your object tool as a library part, and you've got different controls here to override the vertical and the horizontal top and bottom cutting planes, the unit, the origin points. You can override that, but you don't need to once it's loaded by means of the GPS location. And you don't want to fiddle with the origin. And while working with a point cloud in ArchiCAD, whether it's on the plan or the 3D window, you can use your cutting plane and isolate a certain point of the certain portion of the point cloud if you want to focus in and get rid of some other point areas of the point cloud that's in your way. And that way you can trim the point cloud and just focus on the specific area where you can then work within that set of points, which makes it much easier. You don't get all those points in the background. You can just focus on the area that you're working on now and just move the cutting planes around. And this speeds up your whole process.
Right. So it's a bunch of points that come in as an object, and there's no particular reason I would imagine to convert it to a morph, because morphs are actually going to be harder for ArchiCAD to work with, because there are more things you can do with morphs in theory, but these are just a bunch of dots. They're not actually surfaces.
On this specific case, you'll see that the interface on the right hand selected doesn't even give you the convert to morph option because it recognizes the point cloud.
Yeah, okay. All right. Second question, John Ryder. Hey, John, how do you get the point cloud info into the ArchiCAD model? What's that command again? Can you show us?
Okay. File, interportability, import point cloud. Or just keep it up there. People can just take a screenshot if they want.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
All right. Next question. And Rob says, it's impressive. Incidentally, I watched a webinar from NavVis on their VLX scanner, which you wear and walk around with it on your shoulders to scan. So I'm sure there's a lot of alternative or different tools. That's an interesting one. NAV, capital VIS. So I'll just say thanks for the info so people will see that. Now, Sasha Jovanovic asks, what is the cost for scanning this size of project?
Our quotation on this project for the scanning was in the range of it's 8,000 Rand, and divide that by 16.5 exchange rate with a dollar, it would be, let's call it $500.
Okay. All right, 500 US dollars approximately. And
Yeah.
that is what the other company did, as opposed to your own?
No, that's what our quote was for this job.
Okay.
Doing,
And so they went with a cheaper one and got what they
yeah,
paid.
yeah.
Okay. And you were telling
Well,
me that the gaps in this, where we're not seeing all the stuff, are in part because they did a quick and dirty job. You know, it sort of looked okay, but there were a lot of things that there were holes, and you had to go and actually get some more information from DWG files, you said, because they didn't capture all the pieces that were needed.
yeah. So this view here is the model in wireframe light blue and with the point cloud overlay. And as you can see in this area, this whole wall wasn't captured at all. There's a lot of these columns weren't even captured fully from the inside, from that one side. So yeah.
Okay. Are you using a graphic override to get this effect?
Yes.
Show us
override.
show us the setting that you've got there. So 3D is all glass.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about the 3D view that you have right now? So that's making all of anything that's 3D, just this glass color. But do you have something that's in your 3D viewing styles right now as well?
Yes. Let me see.
Okay, it says OpenGL shading with, so this is show contours with
Look.
with the blue line. There we go, monochrome model. Okay, so this is just a viewing style. So you know, there are some that Graphisoft provides. You can create your own. And in this case, its transparency is turned on, so you can see through the fact that these are glass. It's monochrome, so we're not trying to differentiate colors, and all of the contours have been turned to blue. Now, it's interesting, it says sun shadows are turned on. I don't necessarily see that, but
yeah, it's actually redundant for this purpose.
Yeah, anyway, all right, so that's how you got this effect, and that is fascinating to see a wireframe, but with this particular object, which is, I guess it's somehow not considered eligible for the graphic override. That's interesting.
My graphic override rule deals with all 3D types. That being an object in the ArchiCAD language needs it also qualifies as a 3D element type. But yes, you're right by noticing that 3D object element, which is the point cloud, is not being overridden. Yeah.
So if ArchiCAD wasn't smart about it, you could just say all 3D types that are, you know, not on this layer or not on, you know, you could do something that would say, you know, that would eliminate it. But it's very interesting that it automatically figured point clouds are, you know, not eligible for this because it's not making it all blue, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
No.
But that's fascinating
So,
to see the scan and, you know, of course, the wireframe of the model. So you can see that. Awesome. So we are at the 2-hour mark. So Sasha asked, what is the size in square meters of the residence?
I'll give you that quick. It's on my drawings.
Oh, you were going to show some of your schedule stuff, which we haven't gotten to. So let's see if we can do that in 5 minutes, some of the schedules while you're pulling up this data. So the whole building is
Okay, it's not on this one. How's the site plan? And see it all. So this building, ground floor is about 400, and the first floor is 270. It's about an 820 square meter residence.
So 820 square meters. Now, I believe a square meter is roughly 10 square feet, so that it would be roughly 8,000 square feet. So for those of you who are in the US.
Right. Jump into schedules. I did some creative scheduling on this project, and it was for the purpose of giving model-based takeoff data for one of my suppliers of the concrete walls. So in a 3D, I isolated the walls and the slabs just for visual reference. Each of my walls, I gave an ID, which I call up in the label as a key. And then, so this is basically a key plan with the door and window numbers and the wall labels. And then I pulled that data out into schedules. So this is the approximate Salcrete wall volume, which amounts to 46 cubic meters of concrete volume for the precast concrete walls. And as you can see by the IDs, the stories they're on, it's only the first floor, we're only doing renovation. The composite of the wall and a lot of source data, the surface area of openings, number of window openings, number of door openings in that specific wall, which they then use to calculate the formwork, the cost of formwork and how much work needs to go into the custom formwork. So this is data that this supplier uses for quick costing that I gave him by automation from ArchiCAD. The same with the slabs. That's the slabs and the roof, the SIP panel roofing. This is my mass areas. I gave him from the model there. This is another drawing that I specifically gave dimensions to the main building contractor, just to indicate to him the exact roof penetrations, where the blue is the steel columns and beams, where it penetrates the existing roof, how many penetrations there are and where they're at, and the red orange is the full-in brickwork to get the parapets at one level with dimensions for him to quantify. So yeah, that's some 3D documents with semi-transparent surrounding area to the staircase, giving the staircase context for understanding where the installation needs to happen, but giving a clear view of the staircase with dimensions. Just some details.
That's beautiful. That's very, I can see how this just makes it so much easier for people to grasp instantly how these things relate to each other.
And just did two design studies of chandeliers to this atrium entrance to help the client visualize these two different chandelier types in that space. Viewing from the bottom, viewing from the top, just to give them an understanding. And what I didn't say was I use BIMX to communicate my designs extensively with my contract, with the whole team, including the client. I have these Google Cardboard, where's the camera? Google Cardboard which you plug your cell phone in with BIMX as a VR viewer. So actually enter the BIMX model in VR mode. And all my clients get this at the start of the project. I give them a quick start training, and from there on they review and get an understanding of their project in VR through BIMX.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, you had some additional schedules that I recall you had. We had a diagram of schedules with kitchen things. That was another interesting one you showed me.
Yes. It's a finishers, balcony. You just hit the entrance. This is another interesting one. The atrium steel structure with the aluminium frames. Those are W numbers, are the window numbers that retrofit to the steel frame. And then I've labeled these by automatic labeling, getting the specification and size from the actual 3D object or the model, the beam that was modeled, and then the material comes from the property field that was populated. Staircase, balcony, basic sections. Where is that? It's roof, finishing. There you go. So there's a sanitary fitting schedule. This is just concept drawings at this stage, giving the contractors a quick view of the sanitary ware and the basic content, and then the joinery. I've given each joinery item an ID. It is then visualized for the contractor, isolating the joinery of the top story in a view like this. It's a 3D document, and then just pulling out the IDs with automatic labels. And they've got the height, the length, the quantity of each of these units, and what type is it? Is it a top cupboard? Is it a countertop? Is it a built-in cupboard? Just those 3 different classifications of cupboards.
Now that is brilliant. Now, by the way, I'm looking, can you just pull over your 3D document view there? Just zoom in on that part. Okay, so this is a 3D document. So just for those of you who are a little less clear, it's one of the views that you can generate in ArchiCAD for many years now. Similar to a section or an elevation, it will update as you add more things to the model. In this case, you're isolating just probably one layer or a couple of layers of the view. It's something that you can annotate. In other words, it is a view that you can draw on top of. Even though it's 3D, it's actually a static view, like a section or an elevation is looking at 3D elements, but you're not spinning around. So it's a fixed orientation, although you could adjust it if you needed to, but in general, you're going to leave it constant. And now the labels in this case are associated with each of those elements. So when you hover over a label, it should actually hover, it should show you what the element is. It should highlight that. Is that actually doing that?
Yeah, so I'm hovering over this cupboard. You can see it pre-selects by going blue. And just like the dimension, it's associative to this element. And if I then bring that label out there. So if I now go and just change the ID temporarily, let me just go here, segment, classifications, and I got that from where? That's odd. So that,
You got a floor plan and section, perhaps?
there you go, classifications.
There we go, okay.
Yeah, so that is the ID there. And if I change this now to, let's say, 208, you'll see that the ID on the label changes
And of course,
accordingly.
it'll change in the schedule as well. Now, by the way, you have all of these little X's at the corners. Is that something that you've manually placed, or did ArchiCAD do that for some reason?
These are hotspots that I placed for easy dimensioning.
Okay, so you've placed these hotspots in 3D space by snapping to those elements. You're just using the hotspot tool?
Just using the hotspot tool and placing the hotspot on the 3D document.
Right, okay. And so that allows people to see sort of where you're dimensioning between more easily.
Now you can dimension to the actual 3D cupboard.
Mm-hmm.
At the bottom of this cupboard, there's no hotspots. So I can, let's just go dimension that. And if I
So putting in the little X's, the hotspots, is optional. You just did that to make it a little bit visually, as a visual touch?
Yeah, no, I was doing some dimensioning on here, and then I ended up removing that dimensioning. I didn't clean up the hotspots. So I opted to call out the dimensions of these units in the schedule at the end.
Right,
and
but
not
why did you put the hotspot X's? Because you can dimension to the node points without having the hotspot.
That is correct. When you update the 3D view, you can, from this 3D document, you can redefine the viewpoint. So if I go to restore view, it opens the source 3D window. Where's that option to call out?
If you right-click in empty space, I think there is context menu, open 3D source.
Yeah. Sometimes they're on the, so that's my 3D source.
Yeah.
And if I now rotate and go back to my 3D document, on the context, redefine on current 3D window. So it will now take that new orientation, camera view, and redefine the 3D document. And now I've got I use these as my original reference point in order to keep control of my positioning of the view at some point when I was aligning it.
I see. Okay, so it gives you a reference. You made a rather large change in the view, but if you made just a subtle, small change, that would help you to get things back in alignment. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, all of the labels still are there. They're still pointing at the right elements. They've just obviously might need some adjustment in terms of legibility because some of them are overlapping. Well, this has been fantastic, Francois. We're a little over time, and I know it's probably very late there, 1:15 in the morning, if I'm not mistaken. So time flies when you're having fun. So do you want to just say how people can be in touch with you? Is I guess it's your website. You want to bring that up one more time?
Okay. The website is just fusionbim.co.za.
Mm-hmm.
And on here you'll see the design services, the training page, and at the bottom of this training page is the Smart XA and BIM Bakery library tool set that we'll send an email out to everyone because we didn't cover this. And I actually organized a 25% discount on the full library, which incorporates these 14 tools, of which the top 4 is the most popular, and the Smart XA is the most powerful in terms of my workflow on this end with council submission drawings.
This is obviously we didn't cover it. So if you want to check out BIM Bakery, what is it? BIMbakery.com. You can find out. And maybe I'll have Sean Hopkins as a guest one of these next couple of times. Who's the person behind there? But Francois, I know that people will been really inspired. You know, I've gotten some great comments here. A couple of last questions from Raul Raquela saying scanning of the project was around $500 US, but how much would it cost in the US? Because that was a South African one. Do you have any idea?
No, I don't have an idea what the US guys are charging.
Yeah. All right. Now Raul says, what's the estimate estimate X construction and % typical fee by architects over there? And maybe that's a bad question. He says. So, what do you what's the estimated construction cost on, you know, one of these projects, and what is a typical percentage that the architect gets for that?
3%. Okay. Quick thought. Depending on your finishes and your the high end or low end, mid range. So let's go for mid range building cost, and that was about 800 squares for the full property times 12,500 per square meter, which would be 10 million rand build for that property if it was built new. That's the existing and new extensions. And if you divide that by 16.5 for the dollar, it's about $600,000 for a new build of that scale.
Okay, thank you for that estimate. And what would be a typical architect's fee for a $600,000 project, or that number of round?
Our governing body has a recommended fee structure, which amounts roughly to 7% on the upscale. Yeah, times 0.07 is about $42,000. We're still in the dollar. Professional fee if you are appointed for full stage 1 to 6, which is to construction handover.
Right. Okay, excellent. All right, so a lot of great, you know, thank you, so impressive, thanks, super work, awesome, excellent information, impressive, you know, so just all of these things. This is great, great stuff, simply amazing. So you have impressed everybody. Perhaps some of you who are watching this either live or in the recording will find it useful to contact Francois. If you'd like to learn more about how to do scans yourself, which apparently is something you can learn, Francois has the continuing professional development course that he's in the middle of creating, and he's a very experienced trainer. I haven't sat in on your classes, but I'm sure that when you put your mind to it, you've got a very clear step-by-step explanation. I want to thank you for just showing us some things that are possible in ArchiCAD or possible with tools that connect to ArchiCAD that, you know, I had never seen the Matterport. I had not seen this type of schedule with a 3D view. I know it could be done, but it's so different to just see it and go, oh, that makes so much sense. You know, so some things that are routine like that, where I could, if someone asked me to do it, I could do it, but to see it demonstrated makes a difference. And then this Matterport, which I had no idea what it was other than the name. So very cool.
Thank you for the time with you and with everyone on the call. And I love sharing. I love training. This was like training for me, and this is my happy place. So I'm not even tired now. I'll probably crash just now, but I don't feel tired. I feel energized at this moment because it's just fun, and I appreciate your support.
All right. Well, thank you, Francois, so much. Thank you all for joining us. If you'd like more information, you know how to reach Francois. If you'd like help with your ArchiCAD challenges, I invite you to contact me, support@bobrow.com. You know, I routinely help quick questions from ArchiCAD users all over the world. And then I do have a training program which you can get information on at archicadtraining.com. So thank you, Francois. Thank you, everybody. And we'll be back certainly next month with another edition of ArchiCAD User. Be well.
Thank you, Eric.
Stay safe.